I had always thought vacations were a time to reconnect, a break from the monotony of work and responsibilities. My name is Daniel and my wife Laura, and I had planned this trip to the Caribbean months in advance. We were supposed to celebrate our 10th anniversary, a milestone I had been eagerly anticipating. For me, this was more than just a vacation. It was a chance to feel close to the woman I had married, to share quiet mornings, long walks, and conversations that mattered. But things started differently than I expected. From the moment we boarded the plane, I noticed a subtle shift in Laura's behavior. Her laughter seemed forced, her smiles polite but fleeting. I tried to brush it off as pre-trip stress, telling myself that the sand, the sun, and the ocean would eventually melt away whatever was bothering her. On the first evening, I suggested a quiet dinner by the water, thinking a romantic setting would help us reconnect. She hesitated, her eyes avoiding mine. "I just want to relax," she said, a hint of tension in her voice. I nodded, trying to mask my disappointment. But over the next day, small things began to pile up. Messages left unread, dismissive comments, and a noticeable distance I couldn't ignore. By the third day, my concern had turned into anxiety. I tried calling her, sending texts, and even leaving voice messages. Each one met with silence. Then came the text I wasn't prepared for. "Don't call me anymore. I need space." I froze, staring at the screen, my mind racing. Space? During our anniversary trip? It didn't make sense. I tried reasoning with her, leaving polite messages, each one growing longer and more desperate as the hours passed. By the time evening fell, I had called and messaged over 70 times. Every attempt was blocked, and every block felt like a wall closing in. I sat in the hotel room, the hum of the ceiling fan doing nothing to calm the storm in my chest. I replayed our last few months in my mind, every argument, every quiet evening where she seemed elsewhere, every touch that had been absent. And I realized maybe I had been blind. Maybe the closeness I thought we had, the bond one believed in, had been fraying for far longer than I noticed. The next morning, I decided to take a walk along the beach, hoping the sound of the waves would clear my head. But my thoughts kept circling back to Laura's sudden coldness, the way she had built an invisible wall between us. I could feel the tension in every text I had sent and every call she had ignored. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was a deep, gnawing sense of betrayal. I returned to the hotel lobby, trying to gather myself before I considered my next step. That's when I noticed something unusual. Laura was standing by the concierge desk, talking quietly with another guest. I couldn't hear their conversation, but her body language was distant, defensive even. My gut twisted. My years of trusting her, of believing in our marriage, felt like fragile glass in my hands. I went back to our room, phone in hand, staring at the message thread that confirmed she had blocked me. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but instead, I sat in silence, breathing slowly, trying to control the surge of anger that threatened to overwhelm me. This wasn't how I handled conflict, not ever. I had learned in life that patience and observation revealed far more than impulsive reactions ever could. Hours later, I got a notification that made my heart stop. A single unanticipated message from her. It was brief, almost casual. "Check the front desk. I think you'll want to see this." My mind raced, wondering what it could possibly mean. I had been blocked, ignored, and dismissed, yet somehow she had chosen this cryptic moment to reach out. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room. Another part was curious, unwilling to leave the mystery unresolved. I hurried down to the front desk, each step heavy with anticipation and unease. The clerk handed me a small envelope, her expression unreadable. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a note from Laura, folded neatly, with handwriting I recognized but had almost forgotten under the weight of recent days. The note read, "You called 75 times. You proved you care more than I expected. Meet me by the pier at sunset if you still want this marriage." For a moment, I just stared at the paper, trying to process the sudden shift, from complete rejection to an unexpected invitation. The anger, hurt, and frustration were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but now mixed with an undeniable curiosity. What had made her reach out? Why now, after building such a rigid wall? I knew one thing for certain. The next few hours would decide everything. As the sun began its slow descent, casting golden reflections across the water, I walked toward the pier, my steps measured every sense alert. The salty breeze carried the faint sound of seagulls, but I barely noticed. My focus was entirely on what awaited me. Laura was there, leaning lightly against the railing, her silhouette outlined by the sunset. She turned as I approached, her eyes meeting mine. There was a flicker of vulnerability, a hint of apology buried beneath the usual composure. "Daniel," she said softly, almost hesitantly. Her voice lacked its earlier sharpness, the barrier of dismissal replaced by a tentative openness. I remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. Years of emotional distance, of subtle neglect, had built tension that could not be dissolved in a single sentence. But this moment felt pivotal, a crossroads where choice and consequence met. "I blocked you," she began, "because I didn't want to face the reality of how distant we'd become. I didn't know how to handle it." Her admission was raw, unpolished. It was a truth I had been waiting for, though the pain behind it still stung. I listened carefully, feeling the weight of every word. This was not about punishment nor about manipulation. It was about a relationship fraying at its edges, both of us caught in the patterns we had unconsciously built. I took a slow breath. "Laura," I said, "I understand now why you blocked me, but blocking me didn't solve anything. It only made me realize how much this marriage means to me. I'm willing to work, but only if honesty and effort come both ways." She nodded, a flicker of relief passing over her face. It wasn't forgiveness yet, not fully, it was recognition. Acknowledgement that the distance we had created was dangerous, and that without confrontation, it could become permanent. For the rest of the evening we walked along the pier, talking in fits and starts. The conversation was difficult, filled with pauses, missteps, and careful admissions. But there was a shift, an awareness that neither of us could ignore the cracks any longer. The sunset faded into twilight, and with it came a fragile hope. The wall of avoidance that had loomed so large over the past days began to crumble, brick by brick. As I watched the horizon, I realized that sometimes it takes being blocked, ignored, or tested to see the true value of what you have. And while the road ahead would require patience, effort, and rebuilding, I felt a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in months. Whatever challenges awaited, one thing was clear. Understanding and persistence could pierce even the thickest walls, and sometimes, the most shocking messages were the ones that reminded you of what truly mattered.